Hi, Kat here for Lightwave Digital. In this video, we're going to be putting together a little cute pot of gold scene because it's almost St. Patrick's Day. So let's get started. Here we have Lightwave Modeler, and we're going to make sure that we're on the Create tab here. We're going to just go and make sure that my project for the content directory is set to the correct location. In this case, it's my pot of gold project. And I've already pre-created all of the folders necessary for this in Lightwave layout. So it's all good to go. And now I can start building a pot. So working with just point mode, let's go and hit the tool, sketch, and I'm going to just sketch something out here. Now this needs to be something that's roughly going to be about 1 meter tall. So we don't want it to be too big, and we're going to start it from roughly here. We're going to just draw half of a pot if we were looking down one side of it. I'm just going to release, and now we've got a point chain that is now a polygon. We can see it in the texture view. Now that's great and everything, but we need the rest of this pot. But before I go and use another tool to create it, I need to make some adjustments to this little spline of points here that's created that polygon. So just switching tools, I'm going to select the point here at the bottom, and I'm going to go and hit F3, and we're going to center it on the x-axis, like so. Okay, so now we've got that. Let's make sure that we've got things kind of even here. So I'm going to just make an adjustment. Okay, and we'll make the bottom of this thing flat. So I'm going to just take these 2 points and hit H, and this is basically the stretch tool. And depending on the mode that we've got selected down here, it will change how the tool performs. So just hovering over one of those dots, we can see that it'll flatten it out if I hold the Control T down and mouse downward with my motion, and we get a pretty flat bottom to it. So that's pretty much what I expected to do and I need to do. So let's make one more adjustment up here. We don't need this kind of lip to have a little divot in it. Okay. Whoops. That's the wrong key. Wrong key again. Let's pull these two down and out a little bit. And we don't need so much of a lip on this, I think. Well, something like that. Okay, so now I've got this lovely spline curve here. I can go to the next tool, which under Multiply tab, we're going to use Lathe. And we're going to use the numeric function for this. And we're going to make sure that everything is centered. Because wherever you click in your interface is going to offset that lathe motion. And we've got a number of sides here. So we've got 24 sides. This is probably pretty good. I don't really need to do much more than that because we're going to end up subdividing this object in a second. So let's hit enter, and now we've got this pot. Looks more like a mushroom. But hey, everybody likes mushrooms in, Leprechaun Land. Or is that Super Mario Brothers? Can't remember. Anyway, this will probably work. If we want to change this, we can very easily go back and make some adjustments just by hitting Control Z to undo it. Let's just pull this out a little bit. Okay. That's probably a pretty good height. Double clicky, back to the lathe tool, hit N for numeric, and it'll already have it pre-spun. This looks a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to work with that. So I'm going to just hit enter to drop that tool. Now, you'll notice that because of the way that this is drawn, the inside is not visible through to the other side, but the other side is visible to the inside. So I'm going to flip this using the F key, which will flip those polygons. And then we're going to use another tool called thicken. And we're going to just thicken this pot out a little bit. So it's got some dimension to it. And then we're going to hit tab, and that will give us a pot. All right, so now that we've got that, I want to make a proxy of this, largely just for the potential of doing bullet dynamics. So I am going to take a copy of it, put it in the background, and untab it. And I'm also going to add a piece of geometry in here for some gold coins to rest on top. So for me to do that, I can probably do it in one of two ways. I could select the inside ring of this and then create a ledge that way, or I can create a disk and put it in there and just eyeball it. I think we'll eyeball it because it's a good exercise to go into these other tools. So we'll go to disk, hold control down in the middle of the scene, more or less. Enter, bevel it, control held down so that it's got some thickness now. And then we can just push it into a spot where it'll sit nicely. Okay. And actually, I think we'll center it. Make sure it's all good. And push this out a little bit just to give it some interaction with the outside there. Now, this can all just be one object now. So we're going to cut this out of here. And we'll paste it into here. So it's basically got a ledge, and this is going to be a hidden object if necessary for bullet dynamics, so I can fill the thing up with coins or gold bits or whatever, maybe some lucky charms, without actually having to try to fill the whole pot first. So this is going to go into a separate layer. Before we go anywhere, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this has got these two things separate. So let's go and save this out. Whoops, new object. Okay, there we go. And we're going to save this as pot of gold proxy. Pot of gold. Pot of gold. Okay. And then we're going to go to our original, and we're going to give this a surface name. So we're going to go pot of gold. A little bit of smoothing. It's going to be pretty dark. Just a base color. Some kind of gray. Give it a 9.95 smoothing angle. Let's drop this down to like maybe 2% on the specularity and roughness 50%. I have a really good preset for something like this. So I'm not going to worry too much about trying to dial in surface settings here. Just gives it the name. All right, so that pretty much finishes that. Let's save this out. Okay. And we'll continue on in the next segment. Okay, now that we've got a pot of gold, let's move on to a new object and let's create some coins. Now, this is going to be pretty straightforward. We're just going to use a disk tool and we'll hit N for numeric. Give this a little bit of thickness to it. Nothing crazy. All right, so enter. And I want a little bit more detail in this. We'll hit center for it first. And we'll take the top polygon and the bottom polygon. We're going to use B for bevel. And we're going to just push this in a little bit. And using the control, when I was holding it down, just pump that out a little bit. Yep. Okay, there we go. It's got more of a beveled edge. And we'll push this in a little bit more. There we go. And we're going to do kind of the opposite direction. So it's got like a little bit of an impress. So we'll take that down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now basically we've got a coin. Now we should be able to subdivide this, but it's going to need to be subdivided in Catmull Clark. So let's change the mode here. Right. There we got a nice coin. It's like one of those little heart candy things that you get out of the UK called a Smartie, or over here in North America, Smarties are chocolate covered candies. But now you got a little thing that maybe you could put a little "I love you" or "Happy Holidays" or a little stamp or logo on top of it. But this gives me basically something that's a nice little coin. Let's measure it and make sure that it's not too big. Basically, it's 20 millimeters across. So 40 millimeters, so 4 centimeters. That's pretty huge. So let's reduce that. So this is just slightly above 14 millimeters from here to there. So about 3 centimeters in total, which I think will probably be pretty good. So again, let's make sure that this is centered, and we're going to hit Q to give this a surface. We'll call this gold coin. Okay, give it a yellowish but goldish kind of color. All right, and we'll drop that roughness down, increase the specularity to like 70%. And there we go. Then we've got a coin. Okay, so we're going to probably need a lot of these, but we'll create them in layout to give us something that can drop into that gold pot. So now that we've got that, let's save this out. So save object as gold coin. All right, now that we've done that, we can move on to the next part. All right, let's move on to the rainbow part, or the arch of a rainbow. Because of the way that we're going to put this shot together, I don't need like a full semicircle. We only need like a quarter circle, or rather a semicircle rather than a half circle. So I had already created something like this, but we're going to change it. But I'm going to change it actually using the original model, just in case we decide to go, kind of half and half with the idea. So here's my rainbow with morph that I created off to the side, and it has a morph in here that gives me a bend that would be kind of a rainbow as you would expect to see it in nature. Now we're going to change this so it actually bends backwards, so it becomes more of a slide for our little sugar cube character dude to slide down potentially. So let's go and hit back to base here, and we're going to go to the bend tool, and we're going to go and create a new morph, and we're going to call this back bend. Okay, and I already have the bend tool kind of in place here. Just hitting the numeric key, we can see that it's going to apply itself as a kind of a 90-degree bend. I don't necessarily need it to be 90 degrees. We'll see what we get here, but I'm not going to use this for the apply. I'm going to actually manually do it. So in this view, if I were to do this fresh, I'd be right clicking from the base or from the top and then drawing the bend indicator, which is what this orange kind of triangle shape is, out, and then working with the left mouse button right from the middle, bend it out. Sideways, depending on which way we want to go. I can just undo that. We can also bend it from the front if we wanted to. I find that if I just get myself the right spot here, give ourselves a good, kind of like a semicircle or quarter circle bend, then we've got something that works. So let's center this and put this rest on ground again. So we'll go F3. So now I have something that our little dude can slide down. Now I want the pivot to be there versus somewhere else. So if we go back to base and we go to bend, it's still in the right spot. If I go to back bend, we're all good with all three different morph positions. First one being, of course, its natural position. All right, so I can just save it right over top. And we can start pulling it into the scene. All right, jumping over to Lightwave layout, let's go and load our first object, which was the pot of gold. Real pot of gold, pardon me. And here it is. It's got an offset here, so let's make sure that we can fix that first. So we're going to rest this on the ground. Boom. Save that. And now we've got it in the right spot. Okay, so I told you before that I had a really great preset for this, so let's go and take a look at that preset. So let's go presets, open the preset shelf. This user, these are my special presets that you can get off of liberty3d.com, although a bunch of these will be included in the next release of Lightwave. So if you don't find some of these, then that'll be the place to check it out in the meantime. So what I'm looking for is basically this rusted gunmetal. Okay, let's engage VPR and take a look at it. So yeah, it looks like, a pot or some kind of upside down mushroom hat or something to that degree. Works out just fine for our purposes here. Nothing crazy, all good. It's got some texture detail on this. All right, so now that I've got that in there, let's save this object. All right, and we need our rainbow in here. So let's go load object. Here we've got our rainbow. Now it's going to be much larger this time for my pot than it was before. And that's okay. I can just scale this down in Lightwave layout rather than going back into modeler and modifying it there. That or I can increase the size of the pot, one of the two. I had already textured this, so I'm going to show you how that was done. First off, I've got a gradient that's just doing a X to pivot point. So pivot point is obviously centered in the middle of this thing. So it's going to go from one side to the other. And you can take out keys, move them around. I just picked these arbitrarily. I have no idea if this is accurate to a rainbow. Likely is not. But it looks colorful and playful, so we'll go with it. Okay. Next up is a transparency that gives us a transparency distance to pivot. And this essentially gives me the ability when animated, if I put an envelope on this, to cause the envelope or the end of the rainbow to materialize. So I can animate that. And depending on how tight the gradient is, it'll give me a better kind of edge. So very cool stuff. Nothing terribly sophisticated. Just leave it where it was. And we'll just line this thing up. But first, let's get a morph applied to this. So we're going to go and add the morph modifier called morph mixer. And I'm going to just use our backbend morph instead. So there we go. We've got our rainbow with a morph applied there. And now I can scale this down to kind of fit in the pot, or pretty close to it. Something like so. So we have our little dude slide down the rainbow and into the pot. Let's get ourselves a better camera position here. Got a lot of grid going on, so I'm using the left and right bracket on the keyboard to change my grid size, which will give me a little bit more precision when I'm moving my camera around and it doesn't have my subject matter kind of disappear out of frame. Okay, so there we go, something cute like this. I want to see the top of the rainbow. We just want to see basically the pot. All right, so that's a good starting point. Let's save this. And for the moment, what we'll do is we'll go over to display and make sure that we're in the proper color space, which we should be. Okay, so now that we've got that set, I can go and load something like an HDRI. There's a great one that I have in mind here. So I'm going to go and grab one really quickly. This folder, other folder. We want nature. So I'm going to just copy that and bump it into here. Just paste real quick, substitute. So now I've got something in there. All right. Now this is something that should be set to linear. Okay. And we can go to our lights and we can check for the environment light. And we hit properties, drag that over in here. We're going to use a background here. So I'm going to use global off, and we're going to go backdrop. Either use that, but we want our HDRI. So let's get rid of that and choose a textured environment. Of course, this comes up with my LD HDR environment light presets. I already had it in here, but if I'm going to change it, I'm going to probably change it to like dayground or the construction, but I think the playground's going to be just fine. So I can leave it as something that we can texture manually. It's a good thing to do because this is an operation that maybe you're not familiar with. So let's go and use a spherical mode, apply that HDRI on the Y texture axis. And now you can see when I'm in perspective, the environment light is essentially becoming our background projector. And we can see that this pot of gold is in there. And it's being lit with the key light, but also with the background driven by the environment light. So if we don't want the specularity, we can turn it on, turn it off. We can turn the visibility of the environment light off the camera. We can turn its ability to affect volumetrics off. It's a very flexible system because you can have multiple environment lights in the scene, with one of them being visible in the background or not, or have an actual uh, backdrop image. Be completely different. All kinds of different options there. And you can obviously do things like object selections or object exclusions. So I don't want the rainbow affected by this. So I can turn that off, or I can turn the pot of gold off. Different things that can be done for creating different looks or different effects. Anyway, now that we've got this in here, we need some gold coins. So we'll jump into how to populate the pot with some coins here in a second. So let's again save all this. Yeah, save all objects, just in case we made any texture changes. And save scene. All right, and we'll be right back. Okay, for this next part, we're going to get a little bit more sophisticated. We're going to use a couple of tools here to actually model our pot of gold coins that actually sit inside of here. So let's turn VPR off. Go to texture state of solid mode. First thing I'm going to do is going to go and load our gold coin. Okay. And it's going to sit right here in the bottom of the shot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add an instancer to it. Add the self option, so it basically generates itself. Okay. And here we're going to change the instance type from item pivot to a rectangular array. Now, upon enabling that, we've got a lot of coins that have spread themselves out over the span of several meters. So it's 5 instances one direction, 5 instances the other direction, 5 instances in the other direction. So we need to reduce this. We really don't need a lot of instances going in multiple directions, or we can reduce their spacing. So let's go 0.025, 0.025, and 0.025. And see what we get. So now we should basically have like a stack of coins, more or less. So we can take this and just move it up a little bit. And we can see that basically we've got a bunch of coins, but they're kind of slightly overlapping. Now I don't want that because I'm going to use a bullet to place these, and I don't want them to fly apart. So we need to space these out just a little bit more. So we'll call this 30 millimeters, and We narrow the spacing on the z-axis as well. And it might be beneficial to have a couple of stacks here. So let's go 10 stacks. All right, that's probably good. Okay, so I'm going to put this back into its original location. And I'm going to use a couple of different tools here to get this object into from its instance state to a single object. So first thing we need to do is we need to go over to the Lightwave instancer or Lightwave Pro Tools instancer, and it's an updated tool. So we're going to go in Instance Baker. We're going to bake all these to current frame, and we're going to get a whole schwack of objects that are going to be created. So this Python script will run through, and it'll create a null with a whole schwack of coins. So I can get rid of the original coin. And we're only left now with these other coins, which are physical objects now. So we've got about 250 of them. So let's select all these. Right? And we need to go copy to clipboard. So we're going to select all of these. And it's going to run through and copy all those into a clipboard buffer. Okay, so it's got them all. And we can bounce over to Lightwave Modeler and hit under the LD or LW Pro Tools tab. You should see a button here. If not, you can go and add it from your menu layout. And we need to hit paste from layout. So we want to create these as single layer. And we don't really need to monitor it, but I'm going to change the location for where this object goes to. A new folder. So I know it's completely separate. Okay. Then we can hit OK. Now we should be presented with a stack of coins that's basically gone through the operation of creating a whole bunch of different objects, copying them individually, and putting them into a new object layer. So this is now an object that I can use in Bullet. Okay, so let's bounce back over to Lightwave Layout. We can get rid of these coins now. Now we go and load that object. And we should get our 250 coins loaded in here in a second, which is great. Awesome. Fantastic stuff. I'm just going to go over and make sure that I have the subdivision turned off on these coins for the moment. So that's great. Okay, now I'm going to place them just above our pot of gold here. And I'm going to go and load the pot of gold proxy object. Okay, same thing. We make sure that subdivision is turned off. And we don't need to visibly see it in render. We can probably turn off the drawing of it in layout because we know it's there, but it does have that little shelf to it that we created in previous videos. So we've got that little inside ring there that when these coins drop in, they're going to hit and they're going to fill up from basically the edge of the rim upwards instead of having to fill the entire thing from the bottom of the pot up. So we can turn that off the moment. Then we can go and jump over to Bullet. We'll go to FX Tools. Let's take a look at the Bullet panel. And we need to add both the pot of gold proxy. Okay. And this just needs to be set to static because it needs to just sit there. And we can use mesh, leave the collision margin. And we need to add our coins. So let's make sure that's selected first. We go edit, add select from layout. This might take a little bit longer because obviously there are a number of different parts that are in here, and it's going to be looking at it as mesh initially because that's default. We want to change this to cylinder, and we want to use parts, and then change the collision margin down to something reasonable, probably like 1 millimeter. It's probably pretty good. Okay. And now we can actually get this to do what we want in Bullet, where Bullet is doing the work of placing these coins and stacking things. So let's make sure our pot of gold is visible, and we can just tap to, say, the middle of our timeline, and we should see these coins having dropped into the pot and created a pile of coins. Now, that's all good. Just let them sit there and rest. Pick a good frame. Seems probably pretty good. And then enable VPR. And we've got a pot filled with coins. These can use a little bit of a better texture. So let's go and change this to a preset that I've got. So we can open the preset shelf. I've got two really great, fantastic presets in here. Either the gold chocolate decorative one or the hotel brass. Let's try the gold chocolate first. This looks pretty good. There's a procedural texture that's on this that gives it a little bit of life to it. I'm just going to enable the reflection override. So I'm going to increase this to 8 just to have it clean up a little bit if it's giving me any sparklies. Let's go to surface editor again there. Let's go to the node graph and just take this one little bit here and we'll reduce the amount that this is. So for scale, so smaller little dots probably help us here. Let's take a look at it. Here we go. Nice little gold coins. Fantastic stuff. Okay, so now that we got all that going, let's save all objects because we've changed some texture surfaces. But if we want this pile of coins to be here and not have to rely on Bullet anymore, what we need to do is save it out as well in a transform setting. So we got a couple of options for doing that. Mike Green has a fantastic tool that'll do this. If you want to get Mike Green stuff, just go to mikegreen.name and he's got his plugins directory. All these fantastic plugins that you can grab, which are free. So make sure you thank him for all this lovely things. But we should be able to use save selected, and we can give it a target directory. So we just want frame 0. Don't really need a file name padding. And that should save that object out. So let's take a look at whether or not it did that. And yep, it did. So there's our O2 stack of coins. So let me just open that. And this should have saved it basically to location that's in. So we can turn off the stack of coins in the renderer. And now we're just looking at these ones, and they're all saved together as a single layer, which is perfect. This is exactly what we want. So at this point, what I can do is turn off Bullet, so we don't need it anymore. And we don't need our stack of coins anymore because we've used them. We convert them into that stack of coins that we've got as a single layer object. We could probably get rid of the pot of gold proxy because it was there for just bullet purposes. But depending on what somebody wants to do with the scene in the next step, with our little animated dudes sliding in here, that'll be up to them. Maybe they'll need that object in there, because even though that this object, the stack of coins, is now all one layer, they can still be told to interact with bullet or a physical object using parts, as we just created them with that option before. So when a object touches these things, they'll move, a slide apart, or if you have a character bounce into them, they might fly up, like they've won, a lottery or something like that, or video poker or whatever it might be. For those people out there that work in the gaming industry, and by gaming I mean the casino gaming industry, these types of tools are fantastic for creating these types of little animations, and you can get very quick results out of it and start building the rest of your game. So that's a fantastic use case for it. Now, this is pretty much where my contribution for this video on St. Patrick's Day ends. But if you want to check out more videos, make sure you subscribe to the Lightwave 3D channel. And remember to check back often, as there are lots of updates coming for Lightwave as we move into Lightwave 2025.